Hilo Ludi and Ailmans. Before you think it's over, remember this. Queens don't fall, they rise in silence. She may have cried when no one was watching, but every tear watered the roots of her strength. They saw her break, but they never saw how she rebuilt herself in the dark. They whispered that she was finished, but what they didn't know is a woman's silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Because when a woman decides she's had enough of pain, of doubt, of being underestimated, something unstoppable awakens inside her. That's when she transforms from fragile to fearless, from overlooked to unforgettable. She stops waiting for someone to save her and starts saving herself. And that's the moment her comeback begins, quietly, powerfully, beautifully. Before you think it's over, look closer. She's not done, she's becoming. Failure. The word itself carries a weight heavy enough to crush dreams before they even begin. People run from it, hide from it, fear it like it's the end. But failure was never meant to bury you, it was meant to build you. It's not your tombstone, it's your classroom. It doesn't close your story. It shapes your strength, your character, your hunger. Every time you fall, the world might whisper, "See, he couldn't make it." But what they don't realize is that every failure plants something deep within you. A seed of understanding that no success could ever teach. You start to see patterns. You start to learn what doesn't work. You start to feel the difference between chasing dreams and becoming them. Failure strips away illusion. It removes comfort, forces honesty, exposes weakness. It's harsh, it's painful, it's humiliating, but it's real. And sometimes, you need that realness to see yourself clearly, because success will never teach you how to stand back up. Only failure can do that. The greatest lessons are not found in victory, they're found in loss. Every time you fail, you're being handed a message. Not yet. Not that you can't, not that you're not worthy, just that you're not done learning. And that lesson, that quiet whisper from the universe, is what separates the ones who quit from the ones who come back stronger. You can tell who's truly built for greatness by how they respond when everything falls apart. Do they break? Or do they breathe, reflect, and rise again with sharper focus? Because failure doesn't destroy those who understand its purpose. It prepares them, it humbles them. It teaches them patience, resilience, gratitude. And the truth is, every successful person you've ever admired has a graveyard full of failures behind their name. They just didn't let those graves define them. They built on top of them. They stood on their ruins and turned them into foundations. And maybe that's where you are now, standing in the dust of something that didn't work, wondering if you should walk away or try again. But if you listen closely, if you look deeper into the silence after your fall, you'll realize failure isn't laughing at you, it's calling you. Calling you to grow, to evolve, to rebuild from what was broken. Because deep inside, you already know that. The world celebrates noise, applause, recognition, the shining moments that everyone can see. But real strength, the kind that doesn't fade when the lights go off, is never built there. It's built in silence, in the unseen hours when nobody's clapping, when no one's watching, when it's just you and the weight of your purpose pressing against your chest. Silence is where your character is forged. It's where you learn who you truly are when there's no validation, no audience, no approval, just discipline and faith. Because in silence, excuses disappear. You can't fake effort when no one's watching. You can't pretend you're strong. You either build strength or you break. That's why the silent ones are dangerous. They're not loud, they're not looking for attention. While others are busy talking, they're training. While others post progress, they're making it. While others seek comfort, they're embracing discomfort, building themselves quietly, piece by piece. The spotlight is temporary, but what you build in silence lasts forever. It's the foundation under your success, the unseen grind that no one can take credit for. Because strength born in silence doesn't need to prove itself. It shows itself when the time comes. And maybe right now, you feel invisible, like your effort isn't noticed, your work isn't appreciated, your dreams are being ignored. But silence isn't your punishment, it's your preparation. Every quiet day, every unnoticed step, every moment of isolation, it's shaping you into someone who doesn't need recognition to keep moving, someone who doesn't need applause to believe, someone who understands that When the lights come on, when the crowd finally starts cheering, when your name begins to echo, they'll see the moment, not the miles. They'll see the result, not the road. The world loves a winner, but it never loves the wounds that made one. They'll celebrate the rise, but they'll never understand the nights you couldn't sleep, the mornings you wanted to quit, the storms you had to stand through when no one was there to pull you out. They'll see the highlight, not the heartbreak. They'll see the confidence, not the countless moments of doubt that almost crushed you. Because success, the kind that lasts, is born in pain. It's carved out of failure, molded by rejection, and built on the kind of silence that would break most people. You'll give up things others never see. Sleep, comfort, peace, relationships, maybe even parts of yourself. You'll face ridicule, misunderstanding, loneliness. And while others think you're wasting your time, you'll be laying bricks they'll walk on one day. That's the reality behind every success, unseen sacrifices that no one claps for, no one thanks you for, no one even notices. People see the top of the mountain, but not the climb that tore your hands open. They see the trophy, not the blood on your knuckles. They see the smile, not the tears that shaped it. That's why you can't live for their approval. Because if they didn't see you in the struggle, they don't get to define your shine. Success looks glamorous from the outside, but inside it's chaos, exhaustion, obsession. It's hundreds of invisible battles no one talks about. Every step forward costs something. Energy, faith, focus. And sometimes you'll wonder if it's worth it. But that's the difference between those who dream and those who become. The dreamers talk about what they want. The doers pay the unseen price to earn it. And maybe right now you're in that stage where nobody sees what you're giving up, where you feel invisible, where the world doesn't clap for your grind. But don't stop. Don't let their blindness steal your belief. Because one day when the light finally hits you, they'll call it overnight success. But you'll know the nights were long, the pain was real, the sacrifices were everything. And in that moment, when they finally see the crown, they'll never know how heavy it was to carry the cross before it. They'll never see the moments when you broke down, when you questioned everything, when you almost gave up but didn't. And that's the beauty of it, the hidden part of greatness. The part that no one can ever take credit for, because they weren't there when you've been hurt, betrayed, or left behind. There's a fire that burns inside you, a fire that whispers, they'll regret it. I'll make them see what they lost. That's human. That's emotion. But revenge is a prison disguised as purpose. It feels powerful at first, but it keeps you chained to the very pain you're trying to escape. You start living for them, not for you. You start moving not toward your destiny, but toward their attention. And that's how they still win, even when they're gone. True power isn't proving someone wrong. True power is proving to yourself that their betrayal didn't break you. Growth is the revenge they never expect. Because it doesn't just silence them, it transforms you. You rise beyond their reach. You become untouchable. Not because you fought back, but because you leveled up. When you chase revenge, you waste your energy trying to hurt those who hurt you. But when you chase growth, you use that same energy to heal, rebuild, and evolve into something greater than they ever imagined. Growth isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead. It's about taking what was meant to destroy you and using it to define you. Let them talk. Let them think they've won. Because every second you spend trying to make them see your worth is a second you could have spent increasing it. Silence them not with anger, but with achievement. Not with arguments, but with evolution. One day, they'll see you shining in a place they can't reach, and that will hurt them far more than any words ever could. And you'll realize it was never about them. It was never about revenge. It was about your growth. Your ability to stay focused when your heart was bleeding, your ability to rebuild when you were shattered, your ability to become calm in the chaos. Because growth is the ultimate revenge. It's the kind that doesn't destroy others, it elevates you. When you choose growth over revenge, you choose freedom. You choose to stop letting your past control your future. You stop looking backward and start building forward. You take the pain and plant it, water it, and let it become power. Because what could be more beautiful than turning your anger into ambition, your bitterness into balance, your pain into purpose? And maybe right now, that fire in you still aches for payback. Maybe you still replay their words, their actions, the way they made you feel small. But understand this, your destiny doesn't need their apology. It doesn't even need their awareness. It only needs your focus. The moment you stop chasing revenge and start chasing growth, the entire direction of your life shifts. The noise fades. The hate quiets. The energy returns. And you start to see it. The transformation slow but steady. You stop wanting to be seen and start wanting to be better. You stop trying to show them your worth and start living like you never lost it. You realize that what was meant to break you was actually building the version of you that can't be broken. Because revenge burns bridges. Growth builds empires. Revenge satisfies the ego for a moment. Growth feeds the soul forever. And when you rise above the need to hurt others and instead dedicate yourself to healing, learning, and improving, that's when your comeback becomes unstoppable. That's when you no longer move from anger, but from clarity. That's when you finally understand that doubt, it's one of the most powerful forces in the world. Not because it stops you, but because it dares you. When people look at you and say, "Hate can't do it," they're not defining your limits, they're exposing their own. And you can either take their disbelief as an insult or as ignition. Because the truth is, every legend was once a joke to someone. Every dreamer was once underestimated. Every comeback story began with someone whispering, "He's done." But what they didn't know is that doubt is a form of energy. It burns. It stings. It gets under your skin. But if you know how to channel it, it becomes fuel. Every time they doubt you, they're unknowingly feeding your fire. Every time they talk behind your back, they're handing you the motivation they'll later pretend they always believed in. See, when people doubt you, they're actually giving you a gift: clarity. You start to see who's real, who stands with you, and who only claps when it's convenient. And that clarity, it's priceless. It simplifies your path. It silences the noise. Because when you know who's against you, you stop wasting time explaining yourself. You just build. You just move. You just become. Let them doubt. Let them point. Let them laugh. You don't need their belief. You don't need their approval. Because the moment you start chasing validation, you hand them control over your destiny. And you were never meant to live by their permission. You were meant to rise by your conviction. Use their doubt as fire in your veins. Let every whisper push you harder. Let every eye that rolled remind you who you are. Let every door that closed remind you how strong your hands are. Because one day those same people will come back with different eyes. They'll call your resilience luck. They'll say they always knew you'd make it, and you won't even need to reply. Your success will do the talking. But right now, in this silence, in this moment, when no one sees what you're doing, that's where the transformation begins. This is the part of the story where doubt becomes your weapon, where frustration turns into focus, where pain turns into power. Because the truth is, they can only doubt you for so long. Eventually the results speak. Eventually the noise fades. Eventually you stop needing to prove anything to anyone, because the only person left to prove something to. When life knocks you down, it's easy to mistake the fall for the finish. The moment everything collapses, your plans, your dreams, your confidence, the mind starts whispering, maybe this is where it ends. But that whisper is a lie. Because a setback isn't the end of your story, it's just the rough chapter that tests how much you truly want what you said you wanted. Every person who ever achieved something great stood in that same moment of doubt. They too felt forgotten. They too felt like their time had passed. But what separates the great from the ordinary isn't talent, it's belief. Belief that even in the ashes there's still a spark left. That spark becomes the reason to rise again. A setback doesn't define you, it refines you. It burns away the weakness, exposes your truth, and forces you to face the part of yourself that doesn't quit. Because the comeback never starts in victory, it begins in loss, in silence, in that lonely moment when nobody believes, but you keep holding on anyway. And maybe right now you feel like everything's slipping, like the world's moving on without you, like no one sees the fight still burning inside. But that's okay. You don't need them to see it. You just need to keep building in the dark, keep showing up when it hurts, keep believing that this pain, this silence, this struggle isn't your ending. Every great rise, every legendary return, every story that shook the world began not with applause, not with a miracle, but with one quiet decision to keep going. That's it. That's the moment everything changes. Not when the pain stops, not when the storm clears, but when you look at your broken pieces and whisper, I'm not done yet. Because the truth is, life will give you 1,000 reasons to quit. It will throw failure in your face, break your heart, take what you love, and dare you to stay standing. And most people, they don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they stop deciding. They stop believing that forward is still possible. But the ones who rise, they understand something different. They know that progress isn't about speed, it's about direction. Even crawling forward counts. Even when you're tired, bleeding, doubting yourself, that small step forward carries more power than 1,000 words of motivation. Because that step means you chose not to surrender. Every comeback begins in that quiet war inside your head. The war between your fear and your faith. One voice tells you it's over, the other tells you it's just the beginning. And the one you listen to becomes your future. The comeback isn't about talent, luck, or timing. It's about decision. The decision to wake up one more day and fight for the life you still believe in. And maybe right now, you're standing at that crossroads. Exhausted, unsure, surrounded by people who've already counted you out. Maybe your confidence is gone, your hope is fading, your heart's too heavy to carry. But remember this, you don't need to see the whole comeback to take the first step. You just need to decide, not today. Not today to quit, not today to surrender, not today to let your story end. Because when you make that decision, even if the world hasn't noticed yet, the universe does. The moment you say, I will not stop here, something inside you shifts. And that shift, it changes everything. The strength starts to return, the vision begins to rebuild, and that voice of doubt starts to fade slowly, quietly, until all that's left is determination. And as you move forward, limping, bleeding, crawling if you have to, you begin to realize that this decision to continue isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. Because the comeback doesn't happen when people believe in you again. It happens the second you believe again. It's not about waiting for perfect conditions. It's about moving through the impossible with nothing but raw faith. And somewhere deep down, you already know, this is where the real journey begins. Not when you win, not when they applaud, but right here, in this moment of defiance, when everything in you screams to quit and you whisper back. There comes a moment in everyone's life when the world whispers, it's over. When doors close, people walk away, and silence replaces the applause. But what the world doesn't see is the fire that still burns quietly inside. Because before you think it's over, he's not quitting, he's rebuilding. Behind every downfall, there's a hidden plan. Behind every loss, there's a lesson sharpening the spirit. He's not defeated. He's in the shadows, preparing his next move, rewriting his story. While others gossip about his fall, he's training in silence, working harder than ever, waiting for the right moment to rise. You see, comebacks aren't loud. They start in loneliness, in pain, in the corners where no one's watching. They're built through broken nights, through faith that refuses to die. The world will call it luck when he returns, but you and I will know it was preparation. Every failure, every heartbreak, every tear, it was part of the blueprint. So before you think it's over, remember that some people are not done, they're just recharging. They're not broken, they're becoming unstoppable. And when they return, it won't be to prove anyone wrong, it'll be to prove themselves right. Because destiny doesn't end with a setback. It begins again, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. So don't count him out. The story isn't finished. Before you think it's over, he's secretly planning his comeback. Pain, the word most people fear, but the one thing every champion respects. Because pain is the birthplace of every comeback. It's the fire that melts away your excuses, the forge that shapes your strength. No one grows in comfort. Comfort protects you, yes, but it also softens you, numbs you, keeps you safe while your dreams starve in silence. Every comeback is born from a wound that refused to heal the easy way. When everything you relied on breaks, when the people you trusted walk away, when life hits you so hard that you can't breathe, that's where the real transformation begins. Not in applause, not in victory, but in agony. The kind of pain that doesn't just hurt your body, it rewires your soul. You learn who you are when you're bleeding. You learn how much you can take when there's nothing left to take. Pain introduces you to your real self. The part that doesn't quit, the part that doesn't care about who's watching, the part that knows the only way out is through. Because pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to wake you up. It tears down the weak version of you so the real one can rise. Every tear, every failure, every heartbreak is a silent sculptor, shaping the person you were always meant to become. The ones who run from pain stay ordinary. The ones who embrace it become unshakable. Pain is the unseen workshop of greatness. It's where discipline is born, where patience is tested, where vision is refined. The comfort zone will feed your ego, but pain will feed your evolution. When you start to understand that, you stop avoiding the hard days. You stop crying over rejection. You start to thank the storm, because deep down, you know it's building something inside you that peace never could. And maybe right now you're standing in the middle of that storm, broken, confused, wondering why life had to be so cruel. But what you can't see yet is that every ounce of pain you're carrying has purpose. Every sleepless night is a lesson in disguise. Every disappointment is training your mind for something greater. Because comebacks don't grow in comfort. They rise from chaos, from struggle, from suffering that forces you to either collapse or create. That's why the strongest souls are often the most scarred. Not because they were chosen for pain, but because they learned how to use it. They turned every wound into wisdom, every setback into strategy. And somewhere in that process, in those long, lonely nights when everything seemed lost, they built something unbreakable inside themselves. Something the world can't take, can't shake, can't silence. Because pain doesn't just hurt, it purifies. It strips away what's fake, what's weak, what's temporary. Until all that's left is the truth, your will, your purpose, your reason to rise. And that truth, that inner fire born from suffering, it's what fuels every comeback story the world has ever known. And if you can stand there, bleeding but breathing, hurting but holding on, and whisper to yourself that this pain is not punishment, it's preparation, then that's when the comeback begins to take shape.
There comes a moment when everything feels finished, when the weight of failure, loss, and disappointment becomes too heavy to carry. When people stop believing in you, when the world moves on, when even your reflection looks like a stranger. You start to think, maybe this is it, maybe this is where my story ends. But listen, no one gets to write your final chapter except you. Not the critics, not the doubters, not the pain, not the past. Only you. The story doesn't end when you fall, it ends when you stop standing back up. Because every breath you take, every tear you shed, every moment you decide to keep moving, that's another sentence in the story you're still writing. The truth is, life doesn't stop when it gets hard. It keeps going, and so must you. You've survived things you thought would destroy you. You've walked through storms that would have drowned others. You've been broken and rebuilt more times than you can count, and yet here you are, still breathing, still trying, still here. That alone means your story isn't done. People may look at you and see an ending. They might see your lowest point and think it's final, but that's because they only see one page, not the whole book. They don't see the strength you've been building in silence. They don't see the battles you fought in your mind just to make it through another day. They don't see the will it takes to keep going when everything in you screams to stop. You have to understand your story is bigger than this moment. What you're living right now isn't a period, it's a comma. It's a pause between chapters, a space where the plot twists. Every great story has a chapter that feels like an ending. Right before everything changes, maybe this is yours, and maybe you've been trying to convince yourself you're okay, even when you're not. Maybe you're tired of fighting battles no one else can see. Maybe the voice in your head keeps saying you failed too much, lost too much, waited too long. But hear me, as long as there's breath in your body, as long as your heart still beats, the pen is still in your hand. You can rewrite it, you can start again, You can turn the pain into purpose, the struggle into strength, the ending into evolution. Because the greatest stories are written by those who refuse to quit when the world told them to. The most powerful lives are lived by those who turned pain into power, who said not yet. Not yet because I'm still learning, not yet because I still have fight left, not yet because my story deserves a better ending than this. You see, there's a version of you waiting on the other side of persistence, stronger, wiser, calmer, unstoppable. But you'll never meet that version if you close the book too soon. Every failure, every loss, every heartbreak is just a plot twist, not the conclusion. It's the setup for something greater, something divine, something only you can bring to life. And maybe, just maybe, this moment, this pain, this silence, this exhaustion is not a sign of the end, but the quiet before the comeback. Because every legend's story reads the same way. It looked over, until it wasn't. The world counted them out, until they returned. The pain tried to break them, until it built them. And if you're still breathing, if you still care, if there's even a tiny spark left inside your chest, that's enough. That's proof your story is still being written. That's proof the next chapter is waiting. And that chapter begins the moment you decide. Falling is easy, staying down is easier. The real test, the one that defines everything, is in getting back up. Because every time you fall, something inside you asks the hardest question in the world. Do you still believe? Do you still believe in yourself when everything you built has crumbled? Do you still believe in your dream when the noise of doubt drowns your hope? Do you still believe when the pain becomes your only companion? The truth is, everyone falls, everyone breaks, everyone has that one moment where it all collapses. But what separates the ordinary from the legendary is what happens next. Because rising after you fall isn't about strength, it's about choice. The choice to move forward even when your legs shake. The choice to believe even when your heart doubts. The choice to fight even when the world walks away. Victory doesn't belong to the flawless, it belongs to the relentless. To those who have fallen 100 times but refuse to stay down on the 100. And first, to those who turn their scars into armor, their pain into power, and their losses into lessons. To those who understand that failure doesn't end you, it educates you. It sharpens your mind, humbles your spirit, and builds a foundation no success could ever replace. Because every fall teaches you something the summit never will. You learn humility. You learn patience. You learn that pain is temporary, but quitting is permanent. You start to realize that the climb isn't just about reaching the top, it's about who you become along the way. Every time you rise again, you rise wiser, stronger, quieter, more dangerous. And maybe you've fallen so many times that getting back up feels pointless. Maybe the weight of defeat has sunk too deep into your bones, but listen, the ground is not your home. You weren't built to stay there. The fall was never meant to define you, it was meant to refine you. You fell so you could learn how to rise different this time, with purpose. Not pride, with power. Not pain, with vision. Not vengeance. The world will remember your victories, but you will remember the climbs. You'll remember the nights you screamed into the dark and still showed up the next morning. You'll remember the days you felt invisible and still kept working. You'll remember how many times you almost gave up but didn't, because that's what real victory looks like. It's not the applause, it's not the spotlight, it's not the medal, it's the quiet strength of knowing you rose again when no one believed you would. And that's the part of the story they'll never understand, that the fall was necessary. That every time you hit the ground, it was just life reminding you that gravity only wins if you stop flying. The comeback isn't about avoiding failure. It's about mastering the art of rising after it. Because you can't control how hard you fall, but you can always control whether or not you get up. So stand up trembling, bleeding, shaking if you must. Stand up with your heart still bruised but still beating. Stand up with your vision blurred but still burning. Because victory doesn't belong to those who never fall, it belongs to those who never stay fallen. The ones who get up one more time, take one more step, breathe one more breath, even when everything in them says they can't. Because every rise writes a new beginning. Every comeback redefines what's possible. And every time you push yourself off the ground, you remind the universe that you are not done yet, that this story, your story, is still unfolding, still building, still becoming something greater than anyone ever imagined. And somewhere in that moment, when the dust settles and your heart steadies, you realize that victory isn't found at the top of the mountain. It's born each time you stand again. Each time you whisper to yourself that the fall was just a part of the climb. Each time you remind the world that you are not finished, that you are not broken, that this rise. So before you think it's over, before you decide that this chapter is the last one, pause, because maybe what feels like the end is only the beginning of your greatest comeback. Maybe the silence you're in isn't your punishment, it's your preparation. Maybe the pain that broke you is just building something unshakable inside you. You see, life has a way of rewriting the story when everyone thinks the book is closed. The world might count you out, but life counts differently. It counts your scars as strength. It counts your tears as lessons. It counts your falls as foundations. And one day, the same people who doubted you will whisper your name with respect, not because you proved them wrong, but because you proved yourself right. So rise again, not for validation, not for applause. Rise because the fire inside you refuses to die quietly. Rise because your purpose is louder than your pain. Rise because your story isn't over yet. Because the truth is, the comeback was never about the crowd, it was always about the calling. You don't need the world to believe in you. You just need to believe that even in your darkest hour, you're still the storm they never saw coming.